Hi, everyone. Congratulations on making it successfully to this Q&A portion. Feel free to speak up if you'd like to ask a question live or put it in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat, and maybe just to get us started, Jeff, who's joined us here, retired from Lockheed. Hopefully you guys saw the full presentation. But Jeff, if you can look in the chat, there's one from Devidas Shetty about how do you expect Industry 4.0 to be addressed to undergrads, courses, projects, several courses, internship? And I think you had a few ideas you touched on briefly in your pitch, but maybe you can reiterate.
Yeah, and just FYI, I don't see it in this chat. It might be in the other one, but that's okay. You described it. At the undergrad level, everybody pretty much in this community makes use of capstone projects of different sorts, senior capstones, or I know in some case freshman group projects. So I think those can definitely be tailored to Industry 4.0 topics over time. So I highly recommend thinking about that. I'm not, every school's got a different structure, of course, for how they approach capstone projects. But I think that's worth thinking about. Obviously, internships, as I think I addressed on that recording, are your chance in academia to hear from your students who are going to work in Industry 4.0 in many cases, those that are going to industrials or other sort of digitally companies focused on digital and data value creation, have an opportunity to hear from them directly, what they're seeing and what work is like now for them. The challenge, of course, is they're not going to know the difference between Industry 3.0 or maybe 2.0 because they didn't work in those. So you'll have to kind of tease that out. But I'm sure, I know you all have industrial advisory boards. I serve on a couple. And so those are great resources to structure, I don't know, some sort of a Q&A or some sort of structured survey approach for your interns to learn from them. I know some folks have things like, have their returning interns give talks or seminars, things like that. I think that's worthwhile. I think given how packed the undergrad course load is, and I have 2 kids who are in undergrad engineering programs, I don't know that to what extent that's something to be addressed. Industry 4.0, in that context, I think a lot of the existing, I'll say, profiles in terms of statistics and data seem to be getting richer, at least in my experience in engineering education. And I think that the heart of Industry 4.0 is a strategic use of data. So encourage everyone. And I know there's a lot of schools that are sort of figuring out the computing vis-a-vis engineering and what that looks like and how to structure that. But a thoughtful cross-pollination of sort of those data-centric and digital-centric computing, colleges or departments or what have you with traditional engineering curricula, I think is going to be really important so they don't end up in stovepipes, which can happen too often. So those are a few thoughts. Dora, off the top of my head, happy to go anywhere with that conversation.
Yeah, and I do want to I see Carolina's joined us as well. And I'll just add one other thing, because I know we have our current round of strategic interns wrapping up in a couple weeks. And we do a whole series of presentations. And it's amazing for me to watch and see what they all have done across every discipline of our company. So the same thing, I think schools can bring that talent back to campus and let them share what they've done. I think there's a whole lot that can be leveraged inside the classroom there. So hi, Carolina, glad you could join us.
Hello, thank you for having me. I had some technical issues to get in, but finally made it.
So I'll see if anyone has any live questions. Otherwise, I can prompt some more to Carolina and Jeff. Anyone want to speak up and share? I don't know the dean's crew to normally be very quiet and shy, so feel free if you have. I know they extended the time as well. I know it'll cut into your break a little bit, but since we had timing issues before, we'll go a little longer. All right, so Carolina, there is a question in the chat. Someone would like to know a little bit more about the SWE apprentice program that you touched on. So maybe if you want to share any additional thoughts.
Well, this program is a program that we launched last year. We had planned to launch it for a little while, And then COVID happened, so we had to move it to be a virtual one, which was not the initial intent. But before I share more about the program, I guess, why did we decide to create this program? I think that from an industry point, you probably all have got the feedback that there's not enough software engineers in the market for all of us to hire. So the competition is fierce, and we are basically rotating the same talent through all the entire industry, or even across industries sometimes. So we came to the point to decide that we needed a strategy on when to buy talent from the market and when to build talent internally. And that's how we came up with this apprenticeship program. We work with the Department of Labor in ultimating all the design of this program. And basically is a 12-month program. And we take, the only requirement from an education standpoint is high school. So a bachelor's degree is not required for someone to sign up for the program. And what we found is that we've got a lot of diverse candidates joining this program. The intent of the program is after a year, these individuals that go through the program are able to take on entry-level software tasks within our different automotive divisions. Right now, this program is only operating in our automotive industry sector. But we're looking to expand it to other sectors as well. As you know, Bosch is a very diverse company. So far, our experience has been very positive. As I mentioned on the session that you watched a few minutes ago, learning agility was a huge thing that we were looking into candidates. And while we only require a high school diploma to sign up for this program, our hope is as people graduate from this apprenticeship program, they take opportunities for our tuition reimbursement program to continue formal education and get an engineering degree. We also believe this is a great opportunity to get people interested in STEM and in software in general. So we have more people interested in this field, and then we can grow more talent in this area where we're all struggling to find talent. And we are leveraging universities to do this. So we're specifically working with sites like Coursera, for example, where we have curated content to build this program. But also, of course, they're working in projects within each of the divisions. So that combination of theory and practice is really, really key in our program, like in any apprenticeship program, of course.
Thank you.
I don't know if that answers the question.
Is there more information? Maybe we can share a link, Carolina, to if you have anything on that apprentice program on your website. And I also put a link to Carolina and Jeff and Irene's LinkedIn profiles if you guys want to reach out to any of them directly in the chat. So Sharon, thank you for that question. And then looking at one now from Bina, would love to hear more about how we move away from the reductionist approach to engineering education to a more systems thinking. So Jeff, I know you spoke about Aristotle and Plato and your approach as you taught adjunct on that subject. Would you like to share a few more thoughts?
Yeah, that's a tough question. You know, we've had 100 years, give or take, of engineering education in that mode, in the reductionist mode, and it's necessary, you know, for safety and for effective development of systems. But and again, we reported that talk a week ago, so I kind of forgot what I said. So apologies if I'm repeating myself. But you know, that's necessary, but not sufficient to really address complex socio-technical challenges. So, you know, to be in a specific question, I would encourage, to the extent, you know, threads or conversations or even, you know, sequences of coursing can be arranged around problems. That gives you a framework that lets you really think about systems thinking and approach systems thinking. So for example, I think I saw on your agenda, you're going to be talking about the NAE grant challenges. Again, I know many of you have been involved in those. I was when I was working at Lockheed Martin. That's a great framework. I'm not saying those are the only challenges, but any framework that says, look, these are hard socio-technical challenges that involve people and involve technology and involve policy. Those are great frameworks to start to embed systems thinking into learning. And it could be done, a number of ways. It could be done as like a seminar series. So if you take any one of those, clean water, and it has a strong technical and engineering component to it. It's also got a strong policy component and a human component. What's it going to take to get people to move in that direction? So I think setting up seminar series where you can bring in speakers, especially from other, other colleges in your universities. What are the impact of data rights on some of these issues from if you have a law school or business school. A lot of issues about human machine interface if you have an art school. So I think the more, and everybody tries to get cross university emphasis on these problems, but you've got a holistic approach and a systemic approach already there in your university. It's just a question of bringing it together. And I know there's only so many hours in a day and so many credit hours in a degree, but I feel like there's ways, again, using just seminar and lunch talks. Again, the more you can, I think one of the things we've been talking about through ASCE is how to improve the industry presence on campus and different ways to do that. I served, as an adjunct, I serve on industrial boards, but there's other ways of getting a stronger industrial presence on campus because, that also helps you, helps your students to ask questions like, what's really hard about this particular challenge? Because they're often surprised by what we're really grappling with, that move way beyond technology challenges, again, into policy and just sort of human nature. So kind of rambling there. I know it's hard, but I've become convinced that it's critical, because I really believe our profession is best positioned to step forward and take a leadership role in solving these problems, not just in our little corner of the world, but more broadly. And that's hard, and that takes a skill set that many of us don't come naturally to us. But I just think it's really important. So, yeah, 2 cents on that subject.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, so I'm alternating between chats. Someone had asked in the other one about a link to the survey and results, and that the PDF of the presentation should be available in both this live Q&A session and in the previous one. And the last slide of that has the links as well. Hey, Jeff, one other thought came to mind, and I think we have Ken Ball, I saw as participant too. Ken's always talking about professors of practice as being another way of bringing some of that industry knowledge back on campus and actively engaging with local industry. So if you're not active with professors of practice, really encourage you to consider that. Anyone want to share a question or a comment live?
I had my hand raised. May I go? It's Jelena Pacic from NYU Tandon. Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
So I guess it's for the entire panel as well as for my colleagues. And I was looking at the slide with the top 5 skills needed in the industrial space. And we all look at skills like this and decide how to redo our curricula, and lots of things that are happening on campuses in terms of experiential learning and so on are inspired by what the industry needs. But I have a feeling we are all solving the same problem, but separately, right? Is there a way for getting together both the industry and academia to figure out, okay, so what are these key elements that perhaps every engineering program should have? We could all say what we think are those key elements based on slides like this one and many others that we see. I'm just wondering if there is a more systemic way in which we could approach this.
Selena, that's a really great comment. And I'll share something and then see if Jeff and Carolina have more or other deans want to speak up. One of the things we put in the takeaways was something we're trying to do online, because we started this series of webinars for workforce development around Industry 4.0 to bring industry and academia together to do exactly what you're talking about. And webinars a limited amount of time, but we thought if we could have an online setting or forum, and that may be any ASCE forum in the future, but we started with Engineering Unleashed and looked at trying to bring an industry player and an academic player together to create these cards of what they've done to address some of those skills that have been identified through these various research. So that's one place to start, to try to see if we can all collaborate there in ways that provide you a path forward and something scalable, so you're not each trying to recreate and figure out everything individually. I think we have to augment that with more live interaction. So we will have another session at the July conference, like I mentioned, and an October one, hopefully with more policymakers involved as well. So that's one thought. But Jeff, Carolina, do you guys have some thoughts from your perspective?
I think my main thought is I don't know the answer to that question. I think my greatest regret, probably in my time at Lockheed Martin, in my 31-year career, was never really established a satisfactory forum to engage industry, academia, and government and the public sector. Tried a few times and sort of had a few false starts, and I think we shouldn't give up, but I don't believe the mechanism honestly currently exists. I just think it's hard for everybody. I know the constraints that you're all under. I also know, in industry, there's been, for the last 10 years or so, a real, say, bandwidth challenge, just because of cost pressures and profit pressures in all the industrials, that there's fewer and fewer positions and fewer people charged with maintaining these kind of engagements and these forums. And so it's just hours in the day for everybody. So yeah, I think it's necessary. I hate to answer the question by saying I don't know, but I really don't know, but I really think together we should try to figure it out. I mentioned one of those false starts, and I think I mentioned it in the video, is we had an effort called the National Engineering Forum, which was very robust. We ended up doing about 15 or 18 events around the country, co-hosted by engineering deans. We had congressional representatives and industry figures from different towns as we went and talked about the issues in their particular communities, because it's all local in some sense, and learned that there's a real sort of untapped desire to have that type of conversation. Everybody was thrilled to have it. It sort of faltered just because of me, frankly. I just ended up busy at work as we moved into the digital transformation era in my last 4 or 5 years. So I didn't have the bandwidth at Lockheed Martin to keep moving it forward. But there are ways, and I think we should keep trying.
That's why we're not letting you off the hook that you retired. You're staying engaged. Carolina, anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that as well. I think that's what we all would like to see happening, but I think it's a very complex topic, right? So I think that forums like this one, I was also part, for example, here in Michigan, of the Michigan Alliance for Great Mobility Advancement, which was basically a group that combined education, academia, government, and industry together. So having more forums where we all come together and start just the conversations. I think a lot of times we get hung up on the ideal way that things should work, and it all starts with the first step, right? And the first step is all coming together. So I think like forums like this one today, it's a great opportunity to get that conversation started and keep trying and keep coming together and talking. But I think the roadblocks that we all have, I mean, Jeff, I think you hit the nail, right? It's always a matter of, we know this is a very important topic, but it's not urgent. So it always gets pushed off for other things that are more urgent in nature. And at one point, I think we just need to take the first step. And today, I think it's a great first step to start that conversation.
Thank you, Carolina. And I'm going to turn it over to Molly, who's raised her hand. I think we might have Irene Petrick with us. She's joining from an airport. So Irene, if you're there, just let us know. But Molly, go ahead with your question or comment.
Yeah, thank you so much for this forum. And I totally agree with you, Catherine, about agile and keep trying things. One thing that comes up is we hear all the time, oh, engineering students need more business sense and they need more business content. And, since we can't do everything, is there some good place to start? I mean, like, what is the most important thing? Or has there been a study about these are the essential skills? I think that would help us move from recognizing the need and doing something about it.
Yeah, so Molly, I'll share just briefly. I touched on it in the recording, but we did this fresh hire survey last summer, CMC did, and that was really to have the voice of the graduate, you know, the students now graduated in industry versus what all of us might think, having been around a while. And in there, there's both some professional and technical skills. I think I have a link to it in the chat here. So it's a good starting place because one, it's I think a newer skills gap survey, and it's these fresh hires saying this is what I was most prepared for and this is what I was least prepared for. So I'd ask you to kind of look at that and then reach back out to us if you've got some specific questions, but I think there's some good focus areas that were brought up from that survey.
Thank you.
And if I may add something, Dora, I think that even if today that's not part of the official curricula, I think just encouraging students to seek for ways to learn more about business, even outside of their day-to-day classes in informal ways, it's a great point to start, right? I mean, today, if we think about how learners have evolved and how we all learn, I don't know if this wasn't the recording that you all watched, because as Jeff said, we recorded that last week, so I don't remember, or we just talk about it. But if today I have a question or I want to do something new that I don't know how to do, what do? I ask Google or I ask YouTube, right? And I search for it, and typically, you know, I'm all set. And I think that is more and more common the way that people learn. And just encouraging students to be curious about business topics, it's important. I think that those skills that we talked about in the recordings that you saw about having a growth mindset, having learning agility, having curiosity, if we're able to develop those in students and then we just encourage them to be curious about these types of topics, I think that would be a great start, even without touching the curricula of any program.
Yeah, if I could just add, I'm not specific to business, not sort of the broader array of other non-engineering skills, let's say. I'm not sure I would have said that. I think it's important for engineering students to learn that. I mean, I didn't take any business classes in undergrad. And then when I got to the point in my career where I needed to understand federal contracting, I took a class at the locals, it was a Virginia Tech Extension Campus program on federal contracting. I did that Thursday nights. So I think for the most part, you can learn that as you need it when you get to the work world. I think what you do need is an understanding of the business and financial, I'll say, constraints to engineering solutions, which aren't always obvious. You know, the thing that will hold back the fourth industrial revolution is not technology. Just like in the second industrial revolution, you know, we had the ability to electrify factories for 30 years before we did. We just didn't, and it was because of business decisions. There was not a case to be made for the capital investment in factories to do it. So understanding case studies like that and how money and business decisions and technology play off each other, I think that's important, but I don't think that needs to be a class necessarily, or if so, I think it's like a special topics session. So I guess I would be a little contrary and just say, I'm not sure I would put a lot of eggs in that basket given just how limited we have for credit hours for a degree.
Maybe coming up on our time, so I don't know if we'll get shut off, but if not, we'll keep on going for a little bit longer. One other thought that came to mind, Molly, is the other place we see it is extracurricular or real world competitions, you know, where students have to do product costing analysis, they have to do business presentations, even marketing. So just, you know, I guess encouraging students to try to get some of that experience augmented to the classroom that way.
You know, and we do those things, and yet, you know, you're only hitting a very small portion of students. So trying to infuse the content is, you know, ultimately what we'd like to do. But thank you so much. I can't wait to read that survey and see what it says.
Yep. And as part of the series of webinars we've been doing over this topic over the last 6 months, I think I saw that Jenna is on the line. Jenna Carpenter from Campbell presented in the last one, as well as Oscar Barton from, and they were presenting on really new programs, right? Or what Jenna spoke about, and Jenna, maybe you want to chime in here, right? Is really building those kind of business skills in throughout the whole 4-year cycle. So there's a recording of that session, but Jenna, anything you want to share?
Yeah, so we do have the advantage of having built a brand new engineering school. Our first class just graduated last year. So what we tried to do was pick about 7 or 8 themes, modern type of themes that students need to be able to gather. And we tried to weave those through the entire curriculum. And even with an existing program, you could do that. Just for example, communication has been one of the things that, many of the surveys say the students don't arrive with strong enough communication skills. So we've intentionally woven those in. And just last week, we were talking about competition teams. Our NASA Human Exploration Rover Challenge team won the communications award. It was for project reports and presentations. And that's because they've done those about 9 zillion times, not just in English class, but in engineering class over and over and over again. So trying to find ways, it's not like putting an entire course in there, but trying to provide lots of opportunities. Those might be extracurricular, but they can also be around projects and things students do, and certainly internships and other interactions as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Jenna. Other questions or comments? I want to thank Catherine for her comments on Agile, and Ken, thanks for the more detailed view of Professor of Practice there. Lorenzo, did you have a comment or question?
No.
Okay. I could start calling on students in this class here. I see John Widener from University of Cincinnati. John, I know that you guys do a lot on trying to implement these skills throughout your program. So if you have any thoughts or questions that you might have for Jeff or Carolina.
No, but I certainly think the work experience and the co-op is the absolute best way to learn these kinds of skills for sure.
Definitely. And ongoing, that's something we see when it's co-ops that come back every year. They get new challenges and get to approach problems from different perspectives. All right, I see one more new message. Thank you, Molly. So while we're wrapping up here, the PDFs of the slides are both in the recorded session that you may have already listened into. If you didn't, the recording's there. And also in this session, you should be able to download that from files. And that last slide we shared had a couple of takeaways. One was that engineering skills gap study from fresh hires. Please look at that, give us some feedback. CMC wants to continue to try to bring more of that kind of fresher voice of industry to you. There will be a session in the July ASE event on the same topic, so modernizing engineering education, check that out. We mentioned Engineering Unleashed, so try directing some of your educators to connect online there and see if they find some value from who's connected there and the content that's starting to be shared. And then ideally, you and many of the executives from your school, we would love you to join the policies session that we're going to be having in October in DC, hopefully all in person. I see one more comment question here, looks like from Mike. I wonder if our industry colleagues would affirm the benefits of having undergraduate students take courses in organizational behavior theory, group and organization level, case studies in leadership, discussion theory, accounting and finance, marketing, management of technology. So a lot of business skills there. Jeff, is that something that you taught in some of your courses or you have some feedback on?
Yeah, there's a lot there. Specifically, case studies in leadership. I think I touched on leadership development in the video. Again, I can't recall, but I'm a huge believer in, and when I was at Lockheed Martin, I started a number of programs. One of them still active at Miami of Ohio, which is focused on engineering leadership and all of the various things that have to come together to make you an effective leader as an engineer, focused on some of the challenges like communications that engineers tend to have. And so, yeah, I would definitely affirm the benefit of that. Organizational behavior is kind of interesting because I ended up, I'll say accidentally, spending the last 3 or 4 years of my time at Lockheed Martin in organizational behavior, actually working with psychologists that we brought in as consultants to help us rethink the operating system for the company. And I always like that model, which is how the operating system, how information flows through your computer. Companies have operating systems, decision rights, who gets to make what decisions, priorities, information flow, what the form of that information is. And all that's changing in Industry 4.0 in really exciting ways that let you really unleash the power of people. So I was schooled in it my last few years in the importance of organizational behavior. Do I think it's important at the undergrad level? I'm a little hard pressed to say that. I'm not sure it isn't something you need to live and experience and kind of go through those meetings and go through a transition from email to Slack, for example, and see what that's like in terms of how information flows. But yeah, maybe. I didn't know it was going to be that important until later in my career. And then I decided it was, I won't say everything, but yeah, it's huge. So some kind of exposure, I think, is certainly good.
Anyone else have any other thoughts or comments on that topic? There was in the other chat, sorry, I'm just jumping back and forth from some asking for examples of some of the snackable content that I think we heard Irene Petrick speak to. So I put the link to her LinkedIn profile. If you look under the featured section on her profile, she puts her latest research out there and some of that content. She says there's more coming in the coming weeks. If it's helpful, Siemens has some modular curriculum pieces that might be of interest to you. So I will put a link to that as well in the chat. And then Mike had added on to his comment. He was saying his question is intended to identify specific courses that help build leadership and related skills at the undergraduate level. And I don't know if we lost Carolina or Carolina's still there. Carolina, I didn't know if you had any other comments on this topic.
Dora, this is Nathan at ASCE. In the last few months, well, no, just a gentle hug. No, I wanted to thank you and thank everyone who participated here. I just wanted to remind folks before you say goodbye, we've got a couple sessions at 12:55, concurrent sessions, one digital transformation and engineering labs from MathWorks, and I just navigated away from the other one. Ensuring equitable student success through peer mentorship, a case study with Mentor Collective and University of New Haven. So for those of you who want to hop over there in a few minutes, those are both available, but I'll let you have the final word, Dora.
Thanks, Nathan. Just wanted to thank Jeff and Carolina and Irene, if she's out there, for giving us their time and sharing their perspective. More to come as we keep them engaged in the discussion. Thanks to all of you for your questions and comments. Keep them coming. I'll keep checking the chat and we'll have follow up on this. And we hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.